So hello, I think we are live now. It's great to see you, all of you, we are going to start our webinar. I'm very happy to be able to open this webinar today on the role of young researchers in OmegaNet, including both lessons learned and also insights for the future. In our last action meeting, we had an interesting discussion with younger researchers that led us to think that we should dedicate one of our webinars to hearing their thoughts on their involvement in OmegaNet and their expectations on how this and future actions may contribute to develop their own careers. And this webinar was completely organized by 4 early career researchers who are here and will discuss these aspects today. Karina, Joanna, Claudia, and Zakia. And so I would like to first thank all 4 of them for having accepted this challenge, which I'm sure will be very insightful for all of us. So without further delay, I would like to ask Karina to share her thoughts with us. Thank you.
Yes, hi. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction, Raquel, and thank you for OmegaNet for hosting this webinar. I hope that you're able to see the screen. I'm Karina Undam, and I'm one of the co-organizers along with Joanna, Claudia, Zakia, along with Joanna, Claudia, and Zakia, as Raquel said. And today we will start the webinar by talking about the cost action networking and training tools that are available, including training schools, short-term scientific missions, and virtual mobility grants. And then Claudia and I will talk a bit about participation in management committee meetings. And then we will hear from Michelle Turner about networking and the transition from early career researchers to mid-career researcher. And then Zakia and Claudia will talk about participation in working groups. And finally, Maria will talk about work-life balance among young researchers. And in the end, we will hopefully have some time for discussion before wrapping up. But there will also be time for a couple of minutes of discussions or questions after each of these sessions. Joanna, do you want to take over?
Yeah, thank you, Karina. So I'll start by sharing my experience with, in this case, short-term scientific missions. In case, I'm sure we all know what are Sdsms, but in case there's someone watching that are not so familiar with it, they are exchange visits between researchers involved in cost action that allow scientists to visit an institution in another cost country. And the work plan defined for each SDSM should be aligned with the overall objectives of the action. So during I did a short-term scientific mission at Sdsm in Oslo, during my STSM, I was not only able to know experienced researchers and their own projects, but it was also a great opportunity for me to rethink and revise my own work. As I did my STSM at a very early stage of my PhD, having the opportunity to present my thesis project to this group of researchers has given me great ideas and feedback, and has truly shaped and I think improved my own work. So I changed the course of my project for the better, I hope. And till this day, we have maintained what are for me very important collaborations in terms of papers, for example. So some of my papers are co-authored by researchers that I met not only on this STSM, but also during a training school I participated in, or researchers that I've met during the action meetings, and so forth. So OmegaNet has been, of course, crucial for me in this regard. In terms of dissemination and communication strategies for these types of opportunities, I believe the information vehicles currently used are appropriate, or at least I can think of a better way. For example, I can say that a colleague of mine found out about virtual mobility grants via my LinkedIn and has therefore participated in one due to that. I would say though that it might be useful for the more experienced researchers to provide and advertise possible SDSMs. I think that it might help some young researchers that would like to do something different but are unsure what to do or what they could or how they could contribute to, or who would be open to welcome them. I know that there are quite a few potential missions on OmegaNet on the OmegaNet website, which is good, of course. But I thought I would just underline or emphasize that this may be a way of attracting or incorporating young researchers that are not so familiar with the action or that are not directly linked to it. So regarding training schools, I was also lucky enough to participate in OmegaNet's training schools before the COVID-19 pandemic, so they were in person. They provide high quality training on an area such as occupational epidemiology, which I believe is not often easy to find, at least at this level. So also the fact that the contents are made available for one to revisit or just to watch for the first time is extremely useful, I would say, particularly for early career investigators. Yeah, they're invaluable. Also, they are very well designed, in my opinion. The way these training schools are structured allows for a better learning experience. The courses have a high proportion of group exercises or other more practical learning techniques and are very interactive. And although they are also quite intensive, the fact that they are usually residential courses and in a fairly informal setting, I think it facilitates and promotes networking. Also, we are strongly encouraged to present our own work during these training schools and thus learn about other young researchers' projects, as well as get feedback on our own projects in a friendly and perhaps less intimidating environment, which is really nice. And finally, regarding the COVID-19 pandemic, although I don't think virtual courses fully replace in-person ones, they do open up the possibility for researchers to participate that otherwise wouldn't have been able to, either for professional or personal reasons. So I think there are some benefits to virtual activities, and in this case, virtual training schools. So. That's it. I think I'll pass the word to you, Karina.
Thank you. In addition to short-term scientific missions, Virtual Mobility Grant has been implemented as a cost training tool for collaborations. And as the name discloses, it's a grant for funding virtual or remote collaborations that aligns with the overall objectives of the action. And at OmegaNet's websites, you can find a list of the available virtual mobility grants at the moment. and descriptions of the work and the collaborations the grants involve. This tool is, of course, very useful in a world without pandemic and travel restrictions, when it's not possible to do an actual visit. However, I want to highlight the benefits of having this kind of remote collaborations grants in general, because it's not always feasible to travel abroad or to a different city, even for a short term. I applied and I received a virtual mobility grant last fall, and that was a collaboration that would go on over a longer period of time. So it was very convenient that I could work on it part-time and that I could do that from Oslo. And there was a lot of things going on at that time, so I'm not sure if it would have been possible for me at that time to do a short-term scientific mission instead of a virtual mobility grant, regardless of the travel restrictions. So I do hope that this is a tool that will continue to be available in the future, so that those who are not able to go on short-term visits for various reasons still have the possibility of joining new collaborations and creating network. Because as Joanna said, there's a lot of benefits, and and you learn a lot by doing these kind of collaborations, I think. The downside is that you don't get to have that close of a collaboration with the host institution compared to if you visited the host institution. Or at least it's more difficult when you're working remote. But again, a remote collaboration is probably better than no collaboration. I just very briefly want to mention OmegaNet's webinars as well. Since you're here participating in a webinar, you're obviously familiar with OmegaNet organizing webinars. But for me, as a new researcher with limited experience in the field, I found the webinars to be a great source of knowledge. I think they've been really relevant, and the speakers have been very good. And I also want to mention that the recordings of the webinars can be found on OmegaNet's websites and on YouTube. And I've actually gone back and rewatched some of them. So that's a nice tip, that the webinars, that you can find the webinars on YouTube and OmegaNet's websites. And that's perhaps also something that should be disseminated further, that OmegaNet's website is a great source of knowledge. And you can also find the training school videos there. Yes, so I think we will take a couple of minutes with discussion and questions at this stage. So if there are anyone who has questions about any of the tools that we have discussed, or want to share their experience, they may speak up or write the questions in the chat. So yeah.
It's just a quick question. It's Vivi Slundsen. So we were just talking at the core group meeting whether it would be useful or a good idea to continue with the webinars also in the future, even though that OmegaNet might end. So what do you think? Would that be beneficial and a good idea, or I would like to have some thoughts on this from the younger part of OmegaNet.
I would definitely say so, especially for me who is new, and there are not that many institutions that teach about occupational epidemiology. You can take other kinds of epidemiology courses and statistical courses at the university, but it's not that many places you can go to find webinars and lectures about occupational epidemiology, and where you can hear from the experts in the field. So I think the webinars have been great. So I hope that you will continue to organize webinars in the future.
Thanks.
Yeah, Lisbeth says that she totally agrees. Please keep offering them. Raquel asked whether early career researchers would like to have mainly predefined short-term scientific missions topics on the website, or whether we would like to choose our own. Joanna, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I think both alternatives serve different ECIs, I would say. I think, of course, it's good to have the option to choose our own topic, our host, but I think having them predefined helps with to reach a different audience. I would say maybe researchers that are not so linked to or to the action, or aren't sure what they could do or how they could contribute, or just have no ideas, no good ideas of what they could do. So I think it's good to have the option of choosing the topic and the host, but advertising possible STSMs, I think it's always good. Yeah. I don't know if I answered the question.
Yeah, you also have received some answers in the chat, Raquel. So, what kind of support do you feel you would need for an application, SDSM or VMG? When it comes to virtual mobility grants, I personally, I thought it was okay to fill out the application form online, although it would have been nice to know a little bit in advance how much you should fill in, because I think it said maximum 200, 500 words, and that's a lot for each of the questions. So I was a bit unsure about whether my application was good enough. So maybe you should disseminate that it's okay to not write 500 words about why you should or why you want to apply for that grant. Do you want to add anything, Joanna?
No, not really. I think I don't remember being a particularly complicated process. It's been a few years, but yeah, I don't have anything to add now.
Yeah, no, I think the process was okay. Okay, so the next topic is management committee meetings. And in these meetings, there have been separate sessions for early researchers. And I've only been participating in virtual meetings, but I think that having those early researchers sessions signals that young researchers are welcome in OmegaNet. And it's a great opportunity for young researchers to present their research. In the first young researcher session that I attended, I gave my first ever oral presentation. And I thought it was a very good place to start, a good place to practice presenting your work. As it was an early researcher session, people were very understanding. And I didn't receive too difficult questions, which is nice when it's your first time. And in the second I attended, I organized or chaired it, which is a good opportunity and experience to have. So it's great that these sessions are actually organized by early career researchers as well. If you're going to continue to have early researcher sessions in the future, that's something you should keep doing as well. Letting an early researcher organize it. I think that early researcher sessions are great for networking in general. However, I've only attended the virtual ones, and it's not easy to network online. So I think that if the aim is to create networks, it's perhaps better to have more working meetings or discussion meetings. Although I know it's not easy to engage everyone in discussion in online meetings. So in general, when it comes to having virtual committee meetings, the downside is that it's difficult to network. But by having virtual meetings, new researchers and researchers that haven't been that highly involved in OmegaNet have the opportunity to participate in the meetings. So in my point of view, it would be good to have some online meetings in the future as well. Not all of the meetings, but maybe some of them. Claudia, do you want to talk a bit about how it is to participate in-person meetings?
Hi, sure. So actually, the first time I got involved with OmegaNet was the Young Researchers meeting in Stockholm, the in-person one. And I was in charge of organizing it, which for me was an incredibly valuable experience. At that time, I had only been working in occupational health for about a year. And as I have come to find out, we are a small community. So you tend to recognize the same names as you go through your career. So it was really valuable for me to not just recognize the names, but of the people that I will be growing in my career with, but also put a face to them. We had really great participation. We had 10 oral presentations, and it was from 8 different countries. We organized a dinner afterwards that was attended by over 20 people. And it was just the precursor to the Stockholm meeting the next day. So in my experience, this was a great opportunity for networking, both just as a participant, but also as an organizer. And I know this is cost prohibitive because not everybody can travel such a far way, depending on where it is, but also to be able to fund these things is difficult. But I do think that maybe we have gone such a long way within the pandemic that it's possible to have some sort of hybrid meeting where it's more formal to have in person, but those who cannot attend can also present online and be able to participate. You don't get the same organic networking as you do in person, but it is a really, some sort of mix might be the best of both worlds, in my opinion. But the Stockholm meeting was, I thought the Young Researchers meeting was great. It was really fun organizing it as well. So I completely agree with Karina with what she says about being so valuable that a young researcher organizes it and is in charge of just putting the whole thing together. Fortunately, I didn't have to deal with the technical aspects of having a virtual meeting. So I think that's another plus, that everything's always a little bit more tricky when you have to deal with different technologies, different time zones, and etc. But I think both are great. I have not participated in any virtual early career researcher meetings, but at least the in-person for me was extremely valuable to just get to know everybody, hear everybody's research. I was very new in the area at the time, and just learning more about the area just through what everybody else is doing was really great, in my opinion. And I mean, besides it being cost prohibitive, I have no real cons to this format. It was really just nice to get together and chat afterwards also, even if it wasn't about work, and it was great for me, I think.
Any questions or anyone who has other experience? No? Then I think we will move on. So the next speaker is Michelle, who will talk a bit about networking and the transition from early career researcher to mid-career researcher. So Michelle, I will stop share my presentation because I believe you have a presentation of your own.
I do. Thank you very much. I hope that this is working. Does it look okay to you?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, super. So thank you very much for inviting me to present today here. I just put together a few slides just to organize my thoughts around the role of networking and transitioning from an early career researcher to a mid-career researcher. And I guess, yeah, I have to accept I am a mid-career researcher now, although I think I'm still an early career researcher. And so I think I agree with everything that everybody said earlier, and that I do think that networking is important here for this transition. So I just put together a few slides. You may have seen these images already. Nature has a series on PhDs and what happens to PhD students after they graduate. So you may have seen this already, where they have this kind of striking image showing that only 3.5% of PhD graduates remain in university-based permanent research positions, and only less than 1% of those make it to a full professor level. So it's very challenging out there when you're looking at numbers like this. And so this article summarizes that the usual types of advice that are given to PhD students who want to make a career in a permanent academic position is to do things like get a good mentor. I'm sure many of you here today have good mentors. To build up solid network, Meganet can definitely help there. Publish papers and hope for a bit of good luck. But this article also mentioned that now, the job market is so tricky that there are a few other things that they suggest to do too, besides these things. For example, to think very carefully about what type of research job you'd like to have and try to position yourself in that direction. So are you interested in teaching? Are you not? Do you want to write your own grants? Do you not? So you can think about those things and try to position yourself along the way. They also give ideas in terms of how to present your CV, and in terms of, don't only include things like publications in your CV, but include things like, that you've organized webinars or organized conferences or organized early researcher sessions on your CV. They talk about, just accepting uncertainty, accepting rejection, because, a lot of research grants and publications are rejected. Think about your legacy. In addition to doing good science, is there a broader kind of purpose that you want to achieve with your work? And also give yourself time in that, building a research group from the time that you graduate from your PhD does take time. And I would also add to this, mobility is also very important, and networks can help with mobility as well. So another image from nature showing also some very kind of dramatic statistics where we have only about 38% of PhD students are satisfied with their decision to pursue a PhD. Some are less satisfied. And also a large number of those reported that since the start of their graduate school experience, their level of satisfaction has actually worsened. Worsened in their PhD. And of course, there's a large number of students that also report things like discrimination or harassment in their PhD program. So I wanted to point out that networking can also be very useful scientifically, but it can also be very useful in terms of motivation and in terms of support if people are dealing with difficult moments in their career, especially if you're not part of a large institution or part of a large team where you kind of automatically have that inbuilt support already. Another statistic, 36% of PhD students have sought help for anxiety or depression. And so this article in Nature says that, due to the reality of research careers and due to pressure faced on scientists and students. And so this article notes that networks can be very useful here in terms of also giving people the opportunity to develop other types of skills besides traditional research skills that might not be readily available to you at your home institution. So things like we're talking about today, organizing webinars or getting the chance to visit other institutions, to have a change and develop teamwork with other teams. And then these other articles also note that things like networking and networks can also be useful to expose students to a range of other career opportunities that they might not have thought of before. So we know that most PhD students prefer or think that they would like to have an academic career when they're done with their PhD. But networking and networks can give you the chance to try out short stays in other types of work areas while you're studying to help you make that best informed decision for you as you go forward. And so COST really believes that networking is useful in terms of generating important outputs, in terms of funding proposals, peer-reviewed publications. And they also really believe that networking is useful for career advancement, especially for less connected researchers. And so I just wanted to support this idea in general. Maybe I'll skip this slide just to save time here, and I'll end on this slide where this is a slide. So I'm involved in this other society, and I just wanted to let you know that participating in OmegaNet, in cost actions, or in scientific societies, I think are also very valuable experiences. And these are just a series of videos that I wanted to let you know that are online. And this is a new award program that we developed last year, where we developed a fellows program for the society. And the first round of fellows were given to all of the former presidents of the society. And then some of the presidents made these short videos. They're about 5-10 minutes in length that show that each president discusses how they went from being a student to being a PhD student to being a senior researcher and a very successful researcher. So these videos are online too, and hopefully they'll also give you some inspiration and ideas in terms of transitioning from, early to mid to senior researcher. So I hope that was helpful. And I guess my conclusion is, yes, I do believe networks are useful for career transitions and building your career.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. That was great. And it's nice to know that networking and participation in OmegaNet can also be beneficial for your mental health as well.
Mm.
Maybe you could put the link to the videos that you just mentioned in the chat.
Sure, that's a great idea.
Are there any questions for Michelle? So you mentioned that you've been a member of different society, Michelle, and of different, have you also been participating in different cost actions?
That's a good question. I have not actually. OmegaNet was my first cost action, but I believe there are some participants on the line here today that have been parts of others, other cost actions. I believe Vivi was in another one, and perhaps others. I don't know if Vivi or others would like to comment on participating in multiple cost actions.
Yeah, so yes, I have been participating in 2 cost actions before. And the first, I was quite passive. And then, I mean, it didn't make much, of course, but the second one was very beneficial, and it enlarged my network very much. So I have close friends and collaborators from that cost action also. So I think that being part of cost actions has really framed who I'm working with, and also what I'm doing, the topics. So I can really recommend it.
Okay, I think we will move on. And if there are other questions for Michelle, you can raise them at the end of the webinar, when we will have a general discussion. Sorry. Claudia and Sakya, do you want to take over?
Sure, I can start. So this next topic was about the working group. That was a big part of OmegaNet. And I was involved in one of them. And I can speak a little bit about my experience, which was kind of accidental. I had originally decided to join the myocardial infarction one, since that's my research area. But when I started to be involved in OmegaNet at the Stockholm meeting, as I mentioned before. But when I went to that group during the breakout sessions, it seemed like they were already kind of done with their work. The rest of my research group here at KI, we work with mother-children cohorts. So then I sat there for about 5 minutes, decided that maybe there wasn't much for me there. So I went with the rest of my coworkers to the employment patterns in the young working group. What was key for me is that that group was essentially just getting started. The first meeting seemed to me to be in Stockholm. Not much had been done before then. I'm not sure, but that's when I started getting involved. In that meeting, we decided what we wanted to do, which was to write a position paper. And then we broke out into little sub-task groups. I became one of the sub-task group leaders, which was in charge of just organizing everybody and holding meetings for our part of the paper. So that was really valuable for me, that we started in the very beginning to be part of this working group from the start of this product that we were going to produce. But I think also what was key in this working group was our task group leader, Milena. She was really key in getting everybody involved and really welcoming the young researchers to contribute and to really participate. And so I think she did a really great job with that. We, in the end, produced our position paper, which was published. And we have had several meeting presentations, which Milena and several others have given throughout these past couple of years that we were doing this paper. And I think that my experience with working groups is that it's a really good way of involving early career researchers. In a way, it's really up to the task group leader to involve everybody and to really be kind of the glue that holds the whole group together, and that really pushes for everybody to be involved, because being so busy, it's so easy for things to kind of just get put in the back burner for a while and then everybody forgets. So it's really key for the task group leader to keep involving everybody, to really welcome young researchers' opinions and outputs, and to get us involved just in general with the meetings and organizing and scheduling things, and really feeling ownership of the product. I do think that maybe in the future, if there is another cost action, it would be nice to have a list of the working groups and kind of where in the process they are. So if somebody wants to join in, they don't make the same mistake I did and try to join in a group that's kind of already done, so that you really know how to, where you can be involved and how you can get involved. If we don't have meetings like the ones that we had in Stockholm with these dedicated times for these working groups. So that was my experience with it. And I think you, Zakia, had 2 different experiences. So I'll leave the floor to you now.
Thank you, Claudia. Hello, everybody. So just a little overview of my also little experience in working groups. So I had the opportunity to work in 2 working groups and work for one of them. So first of what was the definition of burnout, which was one of the tasks of OmegaNet with the leader Irina Guseva-Kanu. So I got involved in this working group and in OmegaNet by this channel. I was so involved from the beginning. This work led to a participation in some papers, 2 of them, one with Yara Schoman and another with Dragan Mijakovsky. The one with Yara had been already published, and the one with Dragan is Olympia doing things. And the one of Dragan is a work in progress. The second working group was with Kurt Streif about COVID as an occupational disease. I was involved from the beginning, but not knowing exactly the subject, there was a kind of and the distance, because I work in the same institute than Irina, but not in the same institute than Kurt. So I have not so much information about the work process, and getting an insight on the production process would be very, of course, interesting. And I participated as an expert for a Delphi study for harmonized definition of cases of musculoskeletal disorder definitions for courts. But I really did not understand what I was doing until some days ago, when Joanna told me that I was, in fact, in the Delphi study as an expert and not participating in the working group. So I can say that my experience was mitigated. I had some very involving experience, and some other ones that was a little bit more remote. In fact, not really involved in the subject, and all of them are a kind of chance. I have been in one group or another, like by chance. So if I had a proposition about the working group process, it would be something that is open and namely open for young researchers, and that task leader would look for your researcher and put to themselves a limit, saying that no working group without young researchers. That would be, for me, a very proactive action to involve young researchers in working groups. Thank you. And Karina?
Any questions for Sakya or Claudia? Then I think we will move on. Time is running. So the next speaker is Maria, who will talk about work-life balance in young researchers.
Yeah, so this will just be some subjective reflections. It's not real science, but reflections. Next, please. So, if I think there should be one slide before, maybe. Could you go on, see what happens?
Yes, I'll check.
There should be one describing all the niceties with our field before we come to the risk factors. But maybe it was lost. So I can just mention it then. I think that our work is very rewarding, actually, because we can much more than in many professions use our full capacity. We have a lifelong learning, which is actually a prerequisite for what we are doing, and it's deeply meaningful because we contribute to the good of the population. And we get wide perspectives and wide experience, which is really a rich and lovely experience to have. And I think that overall our field is more open and inclusive than maybe other academic environments. Most focus on delivering, doing the job more than maybe who you are and how you dress, for instance. So I think it's easy to get completely fascinated, engrossed, and occupied by work, which can be wonderful, but can, of course, also be a danger. So now we can maybe go to the one about the risk factors, because I think we tend to share some collective risk factors. We are seen by others and see ourselves as high performers. We have high ambitions, not only with our work, I think, but we tend to have it overall, and also to have a lot of creativity and initiative. So we may easily have a sort of ambition for perfection on all fields of life, which is, of course, not sustainable. Initially, as researchers, we also face employment insecurity. And there are lots of things going on in those rich environments where we work. So there will be small tasks and big tasks. There will be minor issues and major issues. And to learn to discriminate between what is a major issue and what is a minor issues, the things you really need to fix and the things you could easily drop, that takes years to learn. And that, I think, is a great stress factor initially. At least it was for me. Next, please. So I worked with other colleagues who had a background in occupational therapy, and they don't speak about work-life balance, they speak about activity balance. So they say that's having the right amount of activities and the right mix, which you yourself feel is the mix you need and the feel which is good for you. And the next one, please. So what I think is important in this is to reflect and focus on what is really important. And that would, of course, be different for each person. So I think one has to settle and be satisfied with good enough in many domains to enjoy the selected important ones where you really go for it, so to say. And I think that others may help you to reflect on this, colleagues, family, and friends. And I think colleagues have helped me a lot with this. For instance, when you have things which are really conflicting, my mentor, my tutor for my dissertation said, as sort of matter of fact, of course, you should give priority to people who really depend on you. That could be at work or it could be in family life. And that has helped me when things really clash. I think that it's also very important to develop trust. So your family understands when work needs to be your priority and they trust you that this is so. And your colleagues understand when your family needs to be your priority. And that there is a sort of mutual trust that you are really dedicated to both domains, so to say, and you really care about both. But sometimes you have to give priority to one over the other. And I think that's something people really understand at work and at home if you explain it clearly. And as a team leader and a boss, I think it's very good advice to say, allow priority to family when it's needed, because you will be rewarded. And this was an advice which was given to me by the leader of an excellent department at a university hospital, told me that when people come and say they need time off for their family, give it to them, because they will reward you with a lot of loyalty. And he really had some very loyal and highly skilled collaborators. So I think this is sort of giving and taking and seeing things in a very long-term perspective. Because if you see us as a product, it takes 10 years or something to produce us, and then you want us to keep going for many years. So it's really about this long-term perspective and seeing what will work in the long run. And it's important, I think, to be transparent. When you feel things are not working, say that they are not working before they've gone really wrong and you are in a really bad spot. So say it early, and you don't have to say that much. You can just say maybe that now I'm not really present at home because I'm troubled about something at work, or at work you say now I'm doing only 50% of what I usually do because there are some issues at home, and that your colleagues will be able to relate to that. And I don't think they'll ask too much. Maybe they'll ask if they could help you in any way. And maybe you don't want to discuss with them. You'll say, oh, I think we'll sort it out or something. So I think this transparency to understand why you are different, why you are not really present and your usual self, that's important. And I think that one obvious advantage we have in our work is that it permits a lot of agency. So there are lots of things we can actually control and take control over. And that's important to do, to feel that you are shaping what you are doing, so that it is the amount of activities and the mix of activities that really suits you. And in that way, I think it's actually a privileged life we have in our field. So that's my reflections.
Great. Thank you so much, Maria. It's good to hear about the experience and getting some tips from more experienced researchers and from the perspective of a team leader. Are there any questions for Maria? Okay, maybe there will be some questions later on. I think we can move on. Oh, there's one now. Or a comment from Svetlana. She says, I would even say that to keep balance actually is the biggest challenge as a researcher, as a PhD student, simultaneously as a mom, wife, etc. Yeah, and I think that I definitely can agree with that. Joanna, you want to take the lead on the discussion?
Yeah, I'll just thank you, Karina. I'll just make a brief summary or share some thoughts. So as a young researcher, it was a pleasure for me to reflect on these questions that we've talked about today. And I also enjoyed very much that we were able to incorporate more experienced researchers' perspective on networking in this case and on work-life balance. So thank you very much, Michelle and Maria, for your brilliant and very interesting presentations and for agreeing to participate. So all in all, OmegaNet has provided young researchers with very helpful tools. And I believe OmegaNet has also made a huge effort to ensure that young researchers are part of the action and that we benefit from it. And the fact that we were even asked to do this webinar today is proof, it's evidence of that. I would also like to mention that inevitably the COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on OmegaNet's activities, but perhaps the inclusion of some virtual activities helped other researchers to participate in the action that otherwise wouldn't have been able to. So maybe, so the question has been raised of maybe we should aim for a more hybrid model in the future. So I think I'll stop for now, and I'll ask Zakia to take over so that we can have a discussion.
Thank you very much, Joanna, for the summary. And thank you very much for OmegaNet and Ingrid, especially for taking to heart this question of young researcher and organizing all these things for young researcher. Like Michelle had said, it's really a challenge to get in to the 3.75% of persons that have a permanent academic situation. So thank you very much, Ingrid, for having this question in mind and thinking about us. It's really important for us. So I would start this session with a little question, little survey. We do epidemiology about all the participants. Have you used SDSM, sorry, once in the 5 recent years? So if it's the case, please use the reaction button on your right to raise your hand. I will count. So even the 4 special girls of today, if you had used one SDSM, please raise your hand.
Are you asking being STSM grantee
Yes, yes.
or hosting also?
No, grantee first, then the hostee.
Yeah.
The hostee will be less representative. You're not so your number is less. So I have one here, Dimitriou, Joanna, Camille, and Svetlana. We have 4. Thank you very much for the participant. Then now I ask person that used virtual mobility grants. Please raise your hand. So Karina used virtual mobility grant, and Karina alone. Okay. Okay. People that followed webinar series. I will count myself. Please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Big success for webinar series. 9 person. Person that had been host of STSM, or the three of the seniors that are with us. So they are very interested in young researchers, seniors. There is a bias here. Huh? So who worked with, was part of a working group? 1, 2, I count myself, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9, yes. So we have here some of the tools of OmegaNet that are very used. So there, it's webinar series working groups. So we can say that they are very nice tools that need just a little shaping to be absolutely fantastic. And there are some that are at the middle, STSM, and some that are ignored, like virtual mobility grant. Although Karina said all the best about it. So I think there is perhaps some advertising thing doing about those tools first. This is the result of the survey. The other point I would raise is, what do you think? This is a question for all the audience. Huh? What do you think about the tools that OmegaNet provides us? Do you think they need improvement? Do you think it's enough? Do you think you don't know them? So, as it's a little bit difficult to speak easily, perhaps the person that wants to speak can just open the camera and the mic and go ahead. So, Malgorzata. She escaped. She escaped. I start with Ingrid. Ingrid, thank you very much for being here. I take into account young researcher. How do you feel about the tools OmegaNet had put here, and do you feel there is a room for improvement?
There is always a room for improvement, and I think it took some time before we understood how to use the tools, all the tools, and how to maybe also how to include the young researchers in them as much as we maybe should have in the beginning. I think the meeting we had in Stockholm, where we were able to invite everyone, also young researchers, was very good. And that I think maybe in Porto we also were able to invite most people, but later it hasn't been possible. So that is the one thing I want to communicate to COS, that how can we include the young researchers even more if we cannot invite them and pay for their travels to the regular meetings? How can we include them in the working groups if they cannot meet us in person and network with them? Because I think that is so important, and the meeting we had in Stockholm was very important in those respects. And I will also say that we are many people working very actively in this in cost action, and you said what I did, but I think regarding these networking tools, Raquel's work has been very important also, and Michelle, and yeah, many people have been important here. So I think that is also one strength of this network, that we so many very experienced researchers have been very actively involved and dedicating their time and work to OmegaNet, and I think that is also has been very important here.
Thank you very much. So we can see in OmegaNet there is a real will to include young researchers, with Raquel working actively, especially in this direction, and letting us speaking our mind about these tools, and perhaps maybe we should, this is just a proposition, maybe we should include in OmegaNet programs and mind a special track for young researchers. Perhaps it would be interesting to give it a try, to include young researcher in, I can say, an automatic way, unless they do not want to be included. It's a reverse way of working. Instead of letting, let's say, the chance making the meet between the young researcher and the task leader, making the task leader looking in a proactive way to include young researcher, and looking for young researcher, or at least opening widely the doors for young researchers, not only for participating in working group, but perhaps participating in the research, and in the especially research for grants, because this is, I think, so I don't know if everybody is okay, but I think it's having grants that make the difference between a young and a not so young researcher, to be recognized like somebody that could have some money for doing its research. I mean, first time we cannot do it by ourselves, but being guided in this new field, because nobody learns how to do it in the school, how to fetch grants. I don't know, what do you think about this, Raquel?
Yeah, so there's a lot in my mind that I'm taking from what we've been discussing, and one thing is Ingrid just Ingrid just suggested that I did something which is very relevant, which is to summarize the numbers of people who have been involved in this. So since the beginning of the action, OmegaNet has supported 23 short-term scientific missions, as well as 3 virtual mobility grants and 7 ITC conference grants. That's a lot. So there's been many young researchers who have been involved in the network, sometimes with very central positions and sometimes more sporadically. And I think that also has to do with what Ingrid was mentioning, which is that we have limitations in inviting people to be present at meetings. And so that's actually a barrier to, a very effective networking. Because I think it's in-person meetings that people get the most, effective experiences and that networks are actually formed. So I think that's it does have to do with the design of cost actions themselves. I'm also wondering whether younger researchers, early career researchers, feel that they are aware of the outputs of the action. This is something that I've been thinking about. That whether people feel that they know what's being produced. I'm not saying that it hasn't been shared, because there have been reports and things are. There's a lot of things happen. There are a lot of things happening on the website. But I was wondering whether if the young researchers are aware of the huge amount of work that has been done and how we can communicate that better. And I was also thinking that the fact that we've used in the past 2 years, that we've used networking tools a lot, so like Zoom and other platforms, might be relevant to facilitate future discussions. And what I mean by this is, for instance, usually applications are made online and there's some sort of pre-approval questionnaire or contact that applicants do by email. So people usually email me asking, either with their pre-approval questionnaire for SDSMs or asking about the conditions. And I think that one thing that we can do is we can arrange meetings, virtual meetings to organize that and to be able to give people some support. I'm thinking of Svetlana's example, where we had the chance to speak before she submitted her SDSM application. We chatted a bit about this, and I think it was very, very, very useful for her to adjust her plan to what we can have, and for me to be able to predict what was going to happen next and what we could expect from her application. So I think there's some level of informality that involves all of this, but my main message, I think, would be that we have been, and I think we will continue to be, if future applications are approved, open to whatever sort of proposal young researchers might have for us in general. And I think I have Ingrid's and Michelle's support to say this, that generically we feel that whether this is something that is top down or bottom up is something that we can discuss in the future for sure. But I think in general, I'd love if younger researchers felt that they have room to intervene and to shape decisions, whether it might be following your suggestions, like on having a compulsory, a quota for younger researchers within the working groups.
A little bit, I know. I was a little bit provocative.
Yeah, but I think I think that's very relevant to be provocative. Otherwise, I mean, we don't feel. I don't think that we need people to agree with everything that's proposed to them. I think that's the point of discussing things. It's to actually have some different ideas and to think about things in different perspectives. And I also, so Maria has raised her hand, and I think she would like to add something to this, but let me just add that Maria's short talk was really inspiring. It's always great to hear you, and there's always a way that you have to communicate things and to communicate your thoughts about things that is always deep and has many layers of meaning. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was nervous about this because it was just reflections. Thank you. Thank you. So I wanted to comment on what you said, Sakia, about not being a senior researcher before you have your own funds. Of course, we all want our own money because that's when we get power over our lives. So, but cost actions are not supposed to obviously prepare for applications, but there are lots of things you can learn in a cost action, which makes you write better applications, I think. So I think being part of writing a position paper in the field where you are going to write an application, and even overall, I mean, to see how you sort of get this overview and make meaningful assessments of what is known and what are the key knowledge gaps. That's exactly what you need to write a good application. So I was thinking of if we could somehow then fuse the idea Ingrid had of speaking to cost about having money to give travel money and so on for young researchers, and also the good training it gives, for instance, to be part of writing position papers, and how that would sort of give a faster and better introduction and overview and that sort of thing. So maybe it could be linked to having part in such work to have that opportunity for a grant, but always maybe to have a very open introductory meeting so you have a possibility to see what's around. Because I think it's a challenge that the cost action is so flexible, which is wonderful, but also that it may be a little bit difficult to understand the structure from the beginning and what opportunities are there.
I hear this one. Claudia, you wanted to say something. Thank you very much, Maria.
I just wanted to second what Maria said about the position papers being so valuable. I recently had to complete my KI portfolio here to get promoted to assistant professor. And I cannot say how many times I used that position paper within my realm of experiences for leadership. It was really my first opportunity to have a leadership position in international collaborations, and really in almost every single area that they asked for, I was able to include this position paper in being a part of the cost action and the early career research group that we had in Stockholm. I've used that so much, so that was very valuable. So in the future, to maybe not, you don't, perhaps not every year, but to just have that opportunity to have some sort of meeting for young researchers, have the possibility of this position papers and having us was incredibly valuable for our career advancements. So I think that would be my main takeaway from this, is that how much I used it, even though my contribution was very small, I feel, but it was very, very valuable for me.
So we're running out of time. So just to close this meeting, thank you very much. I will let the last word to Ingrid. Because
yes, Raquel, do you want to say something at the end also, or just let me?
Well, not a lot. I don't have a lot to add. I just wanted to again reiterate my thanks, very sincere thank you to all the 4 early career researchers who organized this today: Karina, Joanna, Claudia, and Zakia, and also to Maria and Michelle for sharing in very, very relevant thoughts. So over to you, Ingrid.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I also want to thank you, all of you. I think we have, this gives us some thoughts and something to bring back to cost. And also, if I hope we do get funding for future collaboration, either in a new cost section or a sort of continuation, or we have sent an application for a cost innovator grant. Both will be decided now before the summer, so we will know. And I hope we do get funding, and we now know these networking tools better and how to use them. But even if we don't get funding, we want to keep going with webinars to be able to meet and keep networking in that way. So but we do hope we get funding. This is the last webinar during the cost section. We are going to have final meeting 6th and 7th of April. It's an online meeting, and we decided at the core group meeting today that we will want to invite everyone. All the management committee members and working group members, and also all the young researchers who have participated in training schools or Sdsms or other networking. So we want to include everyone in this last meeting. And I hope to see you all there, even though it will only be online. So I hope to see you. So, and I hope we get to collaborate further after OmegaNet. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.